So, what if I told you you could change the rack and pinion in your Tacoma in about 15 to 30 minutes? You'd probably call me a liar, and you'd definitely be right. So, in all reality, you're going to set aside around 2.5 hours to do this job, maybe more if you're not familiar with it. And hopefully, you're not in a rust belt, but if so, who knows how much time you're going to need. Now, we do have an important step we're going to go over, so do not miss that step. We're going to cover it here in just a minute, but before we get to that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the tools we used. Now, these tools I used, you might have to change this up a little bit depending on what's on your truck, but we've got the standard ratchets, 1/4 inch, stubby 3/8, regular 3/8, long handle 3/8. Long handle's used for breaking bolts loose. If you don't have it, don't sweat it. We got a long 3/8 ratchet, short 3/8 or long 3/8 extension, short 3/8 extension, long 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch waller, and then for our sockets, we're gonna have a 10, a 12, a deep well 12, deep well 17, and a deep 21. And then of course you're gonna have your lug nut size sockets to take them off. For these little tools, we're gonna have our trusty clip tool, pick, flathead screwdriver, and for wrenches we're gonna have a 22, 17, a 14, and a 12. And then obviously you're gonna need a funnel, a jack stands, always be safe, and that'll pretty much have you covered as far as tools go for the most part. Maybe a few rags and some handy dandy gloves. Now for the important step you don't want to skip, you want to flush your system before you put the new rack in. We want to get all that old junk out before we start. Unfortunately, I didn't record me flushing the system. I got started on this job before I realized, hey, I don't have a video on this truck. Let's go ahead and make one. So I'll see about making one. If I do, I'll link it in the description. The other important thing is, on this Tacoma, it calls for Dextron transmission fluid in the power steering system, not regular power steering fluid. So that's what the cap says, so that's what we're using. I don't make the rules, I just try to play by them sometimes, so keep that in mind when you're getting all your stuff together. Another note, it's a good idea to go ahead and change your outer tie rods while you're doing this job, but enough of that, let's get into it and get started. First things first, get the truck jacked up on jack stands, however you're going to do it. And then you're going to run your seat belt through your steering wheel. Make sure your wheels are straight, run your seat belt through it, buckle it in. This is going to protect your clock spring and keep you from turning that steering wheel whenever you've got the rack and pinion out. So get that taken care of, so that's one less issue you've got to worry about. If you got a way, take the cap off your power steering reservoir and suction out as much of that as you can. It's going to make a little bit less mess later on if you can do that step now. If not, it's fine. Just make sure you got a catch pan ready. If yours is a model with a skid plate, you're going to have 4 12mm bolts. One there, one back here, one over here, and one right there. So go ahead and take them loose. Let that hang like that until we can set our bolts down, and we'll pick it up and put it out of the way. Time to take your outer tie rods loose. Our lock nut's going to be a 21. You want to go ahead and break this loose. And not knock your light off in the floor. Now we want to move our quarter pin on here. You should be able to bend these tabs back and either tap it through from the back side. Sometimes you can wiggle it enough to get some vice grips. Pull it out. There it is. Now you should be getting some new ones of these. And more than likely, you're going to be replacing your outer tie rod ends if you're doing this job. We're not, because it's a brand new rack. We're just replacing it's leaking. So we've already got new outer tie rod ends. So, with that out of the way, that nut loose, cotter pin out, we're going to take a 21mm socket. Take our tie rod nut off. It would help if you bag these nuts and bolts if you have a bad memory like I do sometimes. Now, if you're replacing this outer tie rod end, you can take a hammer, just pop that bad boy right out. If you're not, you can try to get a punch and hit the center, trying to knock it down, or you can screw the nut almost all the way on there and then pop it to break it loose. Since I have an air hammer and we're reusing this, I'm just going to use the air hammer method. Just like that. Didn't mess the threads up, didn't mess the boot up. Everybody goes home happy. Like I said, more than likely you'll be replacing these, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. On our steering knuckle right here, we're gonna have a 12, I think it's a 12mm bolt holding it on. Yeah, she is. We'll go ahead and take that loose. To make our life a little bit easier, we're going to go ahead and kind of drive a flathead screwdriver up in that wedge right there. What that does, spreads it apart to make it easier to come off that shaft. It's kind of hard to see at this camera angle, but if you'll follow your power steering lines looking back from the front of the truck, you'll see this brace right here. We're going to take it loose from the rack and pinion, and it's going to be a 12mm bolt. I'll reference this spot later in the video so y'all understand where it's at. Alright, so you want to make sure you got your drain pan ready. We're going to remove our two lines. The first one we're going to move is to the left right here. It's just going to have a regular little clamp on it, and the hose will pull off. See if I can get in there without getting y'all's way too bad. You're going to pull your hose up out of the way. And if I can reach in here and grab it without being all up in the camera. I don't think we have our hose up high enough. I'll come back here and get in front of everybody. There we go. Oh, let's see if we can get our little clip tool in here to press up on it. Well, that hose is on there. There we go. Alright, so we're probably about to make a little bit of a mess. Let that drain into our drain pan. Alright, so it's not the best view, but this nipple that the return line goes on, it's a 17 millimeter, and we're going to go ahead and remove it because it's going to make your life a little bit easier taking the pressure side line off. So don't lose it, you'll have to reuse it, but show y'all a picture of what it looks like. That's it right there. So take it off, set it to the side, and now we're going to take the other line loose. So this other line is a 17 as well. Now it is a little bit more tricky to get to. You have to kind of figure out your best way to get in there, and you'll get small turns. So that's pretty much all there is to it. Just keep turning it till you get it out. I'm not going to make y'all watch all that, so we'll move on to the next part. While everything's draining, come over to the passenger side, look up in the wheel well, and you can see that 10 millimeter bolt right there. We're going to take it loose because it's actually holding these lines in place. We've got to remove this bolt right there for our rack and pinion, and those lines are going to be in the way. So when we take that clamp loose, it's going to allow us to move these lines back and hopefully get in there to get that bolt out. Now we're going to take the rack and pinion bolt out on the passenger side. You're going to have a 17 millimeter nut right here at the bottom of your screen, and then the 17 head bolt up there on top. So what we will do is put our handy dandy wrench on there, and then we'll come in from the bottom with our impact. Just like that. Like we just mentioned, when you try to lift this bolt up, those lines are going to be in the way. So with that bracket undone, if I can get in here without getting y'all's way, you're able to just flex these lines out of the way enough to get your bolt out. We'll be catching on. Oh, just like that. So let's look at the driver's side. So the driver's side rack and pinion bolt is going to be right here. It's going to be pretty close to where your lines are. This one, the nut's on top, bolts on the bottom. So same process. We're going to put our wrench on the top side. We're going to move our drain pan. And we'll pull them both out. Now, on your vehicle, take a close look at this, because your bolt, it may go in the other way. So you're going to want to check this on your truck, because if your bolt is coming from the top down, it's going to hit that AC compressor. You're not going to be able to get it out. So you'll either have to jack the engine up or take the AC compressor loose. Fortunately for us, we had that problem before, and when I went back together with it, I put the bolt from the bottom up. That way the next feller that had to do this job wouldn't have such a hard time, and I'm pretty glad I did, because I didn't expect to be doing it this soon. So anyways, I'll insert a clip of the first go around of us removing that AC compressor, so you'll know what to do if that's your scenario. But we're gonna go ahead and remove this last bolt. We're probably gonna have to jiggle that rack and pinion a little bit to get the pressure off of it, and then we'll look at taking our steering knuckle loose. Alright, ladies and gents, we've done some investigating, and our rack and pinion bolt on this side is not going to come out because it is hitting that AC compressor. So we've got two options. We can take the AC compressor loose, move it out of the way, take bolt out, or we can take this engine mount right there. If I can get y'all zoomed in on it. We'll take her loose and raise the engine just enough to get the bolt on out. I believe, depending on how I get the bolts, I'm going to look at the bolts. I believe I'm going to take the engine mount loose and just pick the engine up a little bit. And then of course, when we go back in with this bolt, we're going to run the bolt from the bottom up. That way we can put our nut on the top side, and the next person who does this job will have an easier day than we're having. So that's just some of the crap you run into. I'm not sure why it's that way, but hey, it is what it is. So let me look at the engine mount, and if whatever direction we go, that'll be the next step. The decision is in. We're removing the AC compressor. Now, don't worry, you're not taking lines loose. We're just gonna move the AC compressor enough to get this bolt out, and we're not gonna disconnect anything, hopefully. So the first step, we're gonna take our serpentine belt loose. Got a 14mm wrench up here on our belt tensioner, and when you pull down, it puts slack in the belt. We just want it off the AC compressor. You don't have to worry about taking the belt all the way off, just as long as you get it out of your way. Once that's done, we're going to take 4 10mm bolts out of this compressor and hopefully slide her over, get a rack and pinion bolt out, and everybody can go on with their lives. But a little bit aggravating on this one, but this is what you run into. So let's get this done. As you can see, we've got our belt off. We just set it out of our way. Now, let's take a look at these 4 bolts we've got to remove. See if I can get y'all a decent camera angle. There's your 2 on the bottom. I keep familiar on. You got 1 there, 1 right there. Yeah, there you go. That's a better shot. We're going to take those 2 out, and then the top 2. Now, see if I can get y'all up in here. There's 1 right up here. Let me see if I can get y'all a better shot. You're going to remove this cover, or just move it out of your way. Clips will like this one. Pop them clips out, and it'll come up out of your way. And there's your other AC compressor bolt. Let me get you a better view once again. So with us looking in here, you can see our bolt right here that my finger's covering. Do not mess with these 2. They hold your AC lines on. The other bolt, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it in the picture. This little connector right here, it's on the right side of it, so it'll be going back towards the truck, but it is there. We are going to try to see if we can sneak a wobbler up in there to get to it. Either way, however I can get to it, I'll try to show you or give you an explanation. So we're probably going to start with the one on the very back up top first, because it's going to be the most aggravating. Alright, went ahead and removed my cover all the way, just to make it easier on y'all to see. And if you look up in here, I had just enough room to put a wobbler and a socket on that rear AC compressor bolt. I lied to you, they're going to be 12mm bolts, not 10s. So your little electrical connector right here, just push it down so you can see that bolt, and then you can get right to it. Kind of, it's a little bit aggravating, but you can do it. So now we're going to take all these bolts loose. This back bolt, we'll probably just loosen it up a good bit and leave it in there, so we don't have to worry about trying to fight our hands up in there to put it back. But the other 3, the 1 right there and then the 2 down below, we're going to remove them all the way. Alright, so we've got our AC compressor bolts undone. We ended up taking all of them loose. You can leave your bolts laying in your AC compressor like you see right there if you don't want to lose them. But we still didn't have enough room to remove the bolt all the way. So what we've done, we had enough room to clear it out of its bolt hole, and we just moved this whole rack forward. So now we're going to try to get this knuckle right back here. So you can see our steering knuckle right here. I don't know if I'm able to do this with one hand. I can. Just like that, once you get the tension off this shaft, it'll literally just slide out. And remember earlier, we drove a screwdriver between this wedge right here to kind of spread it a little bit, make it easier. So now that that's loose, let's go back around. Let's see if we can move this rack enough to get our remaining bolt out of it. Alright, so we pulled our rack out towards the driver's side and then rotated it. And you can see our bolt right here. And she's out finally. So hopefully you don't have to do this. Hopefully your bolt comes in from the bottom the way this one will be being put back. If not, at least you get an idea how to tackle that. Alright, ladies and gents, we've done some investigating and our rack and pinion bolt on this side is not going to come out because it is hitting that AC compressor. So we've got two options. We can take the AC compressor loose, move it out of the way, take bolt out, or we can take this engine mount right there. If I can get y'all zoomed in on it. We'll take her loose and raise the engine just enough to get the bolt on out. I believe, depending on how I get the bolts, I'm going to look at the bolts. I believe I'm going to take the engine mount loose and just pick the engine up a little bit. And then of course, when we go back in with this bolt, we're going to run the bolt from the bottom up. That way we can put our nut on the top side, and the next person who does this job will have an easier day than we're having. So that's just some of the crap you run into. I'm not sure why it's that way, but hey, it is what it is. So let me look at the engine mount, and if whatever direction we go, that'll be the next step. The decision is in. We're removing the AC compressor. Now, don't worry, you're not taking lines loose. We're just going to move the AC compressor enough to get this bolt out, and we're not going to disconnect anything, hopefully. So the first step, we're going to take our serpentine belt loose. Got a 14mm wrench up here on our belt tensioner, and when you pull down, it puts slack in the belt. We just want it off the AC compressor. You don't have to worry about taking the belt all the way off, just as long as you get it out of your way. Once that's done, we're going to take 4 10mm bolts out of this compressor and hopefully slide her over, get a rack and pinion bolt out, and everybody can go on with their lives. But a little bit aggravating on this one, but this is what you run into. So let's get this done. As you can see, we've got our belt off. We just set it out of our way. Now let's take a look at these 4 bolts we've got to remove. See if I can get y'all a decent camera angle. There's your 2 on the bottom. I keep familiar on. You got 1 there, 1 right there. Yeah, there you go. That's a better shot. We're gonna take those 2 out, and then the top 2. Now, see if I can get y'all up in here. There's 1 right up here. Let me see if I can get y'all a better shot. You're gonna remove this cover, or just move it out of your way. Clips will like this one. Pop them clips out, and it'll come up out of your way. And there's your other AC compressor bolt. Let me get you a better view once again. So with this looking in here, you can see our bolt right here that my finger's covering. Do not mess with these 2. They hold your AC lines on. The other bolt, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get it in the picture. This little connector right here, it's on the right side of it, so it'll be going back towards the truck, but it is there. We are going to try to see if we can sneak a wobbler up in there to get to it. Either way, however I can get to it, I'll try to show you or give you an explanation. So we're probably going to start with the one on the very back up top first, because it's going to be the most aggravating. Alright, went ahead and removed my cover all the way just to make it easier on y'all to see. And if you look up in here, I had just enough room to put a wobbler and a socket on that rear AC compressor bolt. I lied to you, they're going to be 12mm bolts, not 10s. So your little electrical connector right here, just push it down so you can see that bolt, and then you can get right to it. Kind of, it's a little bit aggravating, but you can do it. So now we're going to take all these bolts loose. This back bolt, we'll probably just loosen it up a good bit and leave it in there, so we don't have to worry about trying to fight our hands up in there to put it back. But the other 3, the 1 right there and then the 2 down below, we're going to remove them all the way. Alright, so we've got our AC compressor bolts undone. We ended up taking all of them loose. You can leave your bolts laying in your AC compressor like you see right there if you don't want to lose them. But we still didn't have enough room to remove the bolt all the way, so what we've done we had enough room to clear it out of its bolt hole, and we just moved this whole rack forward. So now we're gonna try to get this knuckle right back here. So you can see our steering knuckle right here. I don't know if I'm able to do this with one hand. I can. Just like that, once you get the tension off this shaft, it'll literally just slide out. And remember earlier, we drove a screwdriver between this wedge right here to kind of spread it a little bit, make it easier. So now that that's loose, let's go back around. Let's see if we can move this rack enough to get our remaining bolt out of it. Alright, so we pulled our rack out towards the driver's side and then rotated it. And you can see our bolt right here. And she's out finally. So hopefully you don't have to do this. Hopefully your bolt comes in from the bottom the way this one will be being put back. If not, at least you get an idea how to tackle that. With the rack and pinion loose, if we don't hit our head on the rack, you should be able to just slide that rack forward and slide your knuckle right off just like that. And that is the reason we went ahead and spread this out with that screwdriver in the beginning. So now it's time to work this rack out. Let me try to explain to you how that's going to work. So if you're looking from underneath the truck, your rack and pinion's right here. Your tie rod, inner and outer tie rod, goes through an opening in your frame right there. Same thing on the driver's side. What we're going to do, slide this rack and pinion as far through that hole out this side as we can. You'll have to wrestle with it a little bit, but it'll do it. I've already done it once, so I know. But you can get it just far enough through that hole that on this end, the outer tie rod will be all the way through and you can bend it down. And then this big opening, we're going to shoot out down through here. So it's, you may not understand what I'm saying, but I'll try to show you. And this is going to make a mess, so just be prepared for that too. And just like that, your rack and pinion's out. Now let's go look at the new one. The new one compared to this one. We got our new rack and pinion and our old rack and pinion. Gonna compare the two, make sure they're the same. They had actually given us the wrong, or we had the wrong rack and pinion, so we had to go swap them out. Now, you want to compare them and see if there's any differences. These appear to be this appears to be the correct rack. So we're gonna have to swap over a tube for our low pressure line, which we've already taken off that one when we were trying to take our line off and was having all that trouble. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna take a Sharpie and you're gonna put marks on your boot, because this boot will spin. And then we're gonna put vice grips on this rack and turn it all the way one way, and then turn it the opposite way all the way to full lock, but we're going to count the turns and we're going to find the center of the track. So for example, if we turn it all the way one way and it takes 2 turns to go all the way the other way, divide that in half and that's 1. You turn it back 1 turn and that should be center of your rack. The outside doesn't really matter, you just want to go off this. Now we're going to mark, these usually come pretty close to being centered. We're going to mark it to see how close this one was, which is already marked. So now we're going to put our vice grips on it, and your vice grips, they're going to go right here on the smooth part, not the rib part, because you don't want to mess that up. You want these tight enough that you can grip it, but not so tight that it bites in and chews it up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pop them on there, just like that, and we're going to turn it. till it stops right there. Now we're going to take them off, and the way I like to do it, right about there, we're going to put it in line with this rack and pinion. We're going to count it. So there's 1, 2, 3. It's 3.5. So just a little bit past 3.5. It's 3.5. So that would be 1 3/4 with a touch bit more. We're going to go back. So what we're going to do is take this back off. We're going to put it back on here like this, just so we can use that rack as a reference. 1. So it's a half. So that's 3/4. We're going to go about right there. That should have us fairly close to being where we need to be. And we'll take a look and see how close our mark is that we made previously. So you can see our mark we made right there, and it was originally right there. So we were pretty close. Now we'll verify this once we get the rack hooked up in the car. We'll turn the steering wheel and make sure it turns the way it's supposed to. But we'll go ahead and make another mark. That way if we move this rack when we're putting it in, we can center it back up before we hook our knuckle to it. We got the rack and pinion set back in there. We went ahead and set our bolts holding it. This bolt we come up from the bottom. That way if this bad boy has to be changed again, it's not going to be too big a deal. We did put a little bit of Loctite on there just for security purposes. Now if we go around over here, if I can get y'all on the camera, for our shaft, we've got it back on. Now the way I did it, I put my passenger side bolt in and started the nut. I left this bolt right here going up, out, slid my rack forward, lined my shaft up, and then slid it onto the rack and then moved the rack back. That way you're not fighting with this, and that worked out pretty well for me. So that's what I would recommend you do if that's how you're going about it. Now we do have our compressor bolted back up and our serpentine belt put back on. Don't forget, torque specs will be in the comments or on the blog post in the description, video description. So now we're going to look at doing the outer tie rods. Let's go over and take a look at that. To do our outer tie rods, it's going to be these right here. We're going to take some measurements. Now you're not going to get this exactly right. This is just to get you in the ballpark till you get alignment. So I've got a piece of paper. I'm going to write driver's side and then passenger side. Now there's not a good way to get an accurate measurement without removing this boot and measuring off the actual inner tie rod, because these outer tie rods could have something different about them, but we're not doing that. We don't want to break the clamp on it and have to get another clamp. So we're going to get it as close as we can in the ballpark, and then the alignment shop will handle it from there. So what you're going to do is find a place to measure off this inner tie rod. We're going to go with this little lip right here before the boot, and then we're going to measure just to the back side of this nut. So we're right at 5 inches. So we're going to write 5 inches for the driver's side. Then we're going to do the exact same thing over here on our passenger side. See if we can't move y'all a little bit. We're going to measure right there to the back of the nut, and it's 4 7/8 for that. 4 7/8. Now, this isn't going to be exact. You will need an alignment when you replace this rack or anytime you mess with your tie rods, but this will hopefully get us close enough to where we can drive it down the road without it doing anything crazy. So now that we've got that measurement, we can actually remove these, because we're going to need these lock nuts. Your rack and pinion or your outer tie rods may have came with lock nuts, mine didn't. Super simple. We're going to spin this outer tie rod all the way off, then we're going to take the nut off, and then we'll go over to our new rack and pinion and we'll thread that nut on to that specific length that we've already measured. Time to put the outer tie rods on. So we measured, ran our nut back to where it needs to be. Now you're just going to twist your tie rod on until it gets flush with that nut. Just like that. And we'll go ahead and spin it around about that much, because if you'll remember, these are going to go up from the bottom. Just like that. Start our castle nut here. Then we're going to torque that down to the proper specs, and we'll put our Carter key in it. Alright, these are going to torque down to 36 foot-pounds. Just going to double check. Make sure she is there. Alright, so now we're going to look to see if we've got a keyway lined up. And we don't. So we're going to turn it just a little bit more to get that keyway lined up. Almost there. Just going just a little bit at a time until we get that hole lined up so we can put our Carter key in. And there it is. That's kind of a crappy shot, but hopefully y'all get what's going on. So now with that dude done, new Carter pins, we're going to take, I'm sure people will debate this in the comments. The way I do it, I just put it in, fold one up and all the way around, just like that. And then you can push this other one down if you want to. But that's going to be, keep that nut from backing off if it does happen to get loose. Now, we've also got grease fittings we're going to put in here. We're going to go ahead and do the other side, get that put together. We're going to get some Loctite and put our steering linkage bolt back in as well. We're going to go ahead and start hooking the lines up. Now, you're going to want to replace your O-rings on the end of your lines. Clean that off a little bit. Then just take a pick and get it behind that O-ring. It'll pop right off. We're going to take a shop vac. Make sure this area is nice and clean. And then we will set our new O-ring. Just slide it. If I can do it with gloves. It should go right on. Now we are going to coat this O-ring with some clean power steering fluid, and we'll be ready to set it back in. So I don't have a good way to get the most ideal view on this. Hopefully where I've got y'all will work. We're going to put our high pressure line in first, because it's easier to start the other line. And sometimes these things can be a little bit tricky. You just gotta take your time with it. Make sure you're getting it threaded in right. I believe that's gonna be it. So we'll go ahead and tighten it with our wrench. didn't see much sense in making y'all watch me turn a wrench an eighth of a turn at a time. So got the high pressure line in. Now we're gonna put our return line bib, nipple, whatever you want to call it. Screw it in, and then we're gonna go ahead and tighten it, and we will put our low pressure line back on as well. And again, we're gonna skip to the good part and not waste time watching all this. Just an update on the hose nipple. You can put a 17mm socket on there. It's not too long for it, so that's a lot quicker than using a wrench. Don't know why I didn't think of that originally, but there it is. We put a ratchet on it. It's snugged up. Now we're going to go over and look at securing our lines. We've got our clamp back on right here. It was a 12mm bolt holding it to the rack and pinion. And then we've also got our other clamp over here on the side of the block put back on. I believe it was a 10mm holding it on, where we had to move these lines out of our way to get this rack and pinion bolts out. Both of them done up. Got our linkage bolt back in, hoses on, tighten, hose clamps put on. So now for the next part. Almost at the finish line. So if you've got grease fittings on your new tie rod ends, go ahead and grease them. Put your little dust caps back on there. We're going to double check to make sure we've got our castle nuts on, quarter pins in. Just double check, make sure everything's tightened. Lines are on and tightened up. We've got our steering knuckle bolted up and tightened down. And we do not have our lock nuts on our tie rods tight yet. The reason for this, when we put our tires on, we set this truck on the ground. We're hoping we're going to be pretty straight on our toe. But if one of your tires, when your steering wheel is straight, if both of your tires and one of your tires looks way off like it's turning, then what you're going to do is you're going to jack it back up, and you're going to turn this right here to adjust it in or out. Now, depending on what brand rack and pinion or inner tie rod you've got, is probably going to depend on the size wrench goes on there. So anyways, that's that. We've pretty much got everything buttoned up. We're going to go ahead and throw our skid plate back under here. I believe it was 4 12mm bolts, if I recall correctly. And we're going to be ready to put some fluid in it. If everything's looking good so far, you've set your truck back on the ground, tires look fairly straight, don't forget to tighten your lock nuts on your tie rod ends. With all that been taken care of, now what we're going to want to do is remove our power steering fluid cap. We're going to add fluid to the full line, and then you're going to want to jack your tires back up if you're done adjusting your toe, and you're just going to turn it full lock left, full lock right. So just turn the steering wheel all the way to the left until it won't turn anymore, then turn the steering wheel all the way to the right until it won't turn anymore. Do that probably 2 times, and then check your fluid and see how much it's dropped. Top it back off, and just repeat the process. Once you've done it a few times, you'll be able to spread it out further and further apart. You don't always have to do 2, but you don't want to turn it and it run out of fluid and you get air in there. It'll just make the process take a little bit longer. The proper way is going to be to put a vacuum on the power steering system. I'm probably going to do that just because it's easier, but I know if you're at home, you probably don't have that. I've had very good luck with the wheels off the ground, just slowly turning it from left lock to right lock, double checking your fluid levels, and you'll be fine. Once you can keep turning the steering wheel and your fluid level doesn't change, you should be good to go. At that point, crank it up, check it. If it makes any kind of weird noises, shut it back off, and you're probably going to have to wait a few minutes. Your power steering fluid will probably foam up if it wasn't bled properly. So you'll probably have to wait a few minutes, let the foam part go down to where it looks back like fluid, and then just repeat the process, and you will get there. It works 99% of the time. So hopefully this works out for you. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Any suggestions, put them in the comments. And if this was useful, hit that like and subscribe button. I think 20% of y'all are actually subscribed, and the other 80% are just random people in there. So hey, hit the subscribe button, join it, check out the blog. I'm gonna try to post all of your torque specs in there, so you'll have that. So there it is, another one down.